Greetings class, this is your instructor James, and this is our video on covering breastfeeding, which we did not get a chance to discuss in class last time. I wanted to start us off with some good news about breastfeeding, at least here in Colorado. According to the CDC's latest research, we actually rank first in mothers who breastfeed exclusively for their baby's first 6 months of life. I'll repeat that again. We rank number one in amongst all the states in mothers who exclusively breastfeed during their baby's first 6 months. Uh, what? So that's the good news. The somewhat downside is that that percentage of mothers is only 26%. So much more work can be done in this area, and clearly this infant is enthusiastic about breastfeeding and hopes that all mothers, Colorado and nationwide, would choose to breastfeed exclusively for the first 6 months of life and get that percentage up above, certainly above 50%. So the process of breast milk production is what we call lactation. And breastfeeding is really mediated or facilitated by two different hormones. As we've learned about this semester, hormones regulate many different body processes. And the first hormone involved in breastfeeding is known as prolactin. Prolactin, production of milk or synthesis of milk. This hormone is its levels are higher at the end of the pregnancy as the woman's body is preparing for breastfeeding. Now remember, this is going to happen irrespective of what the mother's mental state is or what her personal decision has been about breastfeeding, whether she chooses to do so or not. The other hormone involved in breastfeeding is called oxytocin. This hormone is responsible for what we call milk letdown. So one hormone produces the milk, and that breast milk is stored deep within the breast tissue. Another hormone is responsible for releasing that milk from deep within the tissue to the nipple area. Now, this hormone oxytocin is highly variable in the sense that some women have a very strong oxytocin or letdown reflex, excuse me, and other women have a weak one. And that reflex can be impacted by many factors, in particular stress, fatigue, and lack of confidence. All three of those may happen to new mothers and mothers attempting to breastfeed for the first time. So while many mothers wish to breastfeed their infant, some may not be able to because there's too much stress, fatigue, and maybe social circumstances that do not are not helpful for breastfeeding. So again, two hormones involved in breastfeeding. Prolactin, we got to produce the milk first. Oxytocin, which causes the release of that milk deep within the breast to the nipple, where then the awaiting infant will consume it. We do know that within the first 6 months of life, and actually beyond, that breast milk can serve as a sole source of nutrition. Infants don't require any other supplements or solid food within the first 6 months of life, and that's the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation. World Health Organization has a much lengthier recommendation for breastfeeding, that being for at least 2 years, and you have to understand that the reason why is because they are giving a global recommendation. Many women globally stay home for extended periods of time after giving birth. They may not have the luxury of things like formula or maybe other nutritional luxuries that we have here in the United States. So they have there's a longer recommendation for the entire planet. Well, what are some of the advantages of breastfeeding? Your textbook, Table 17-5 on page 619, outlines these for us for both the infant and for the mother. Breast milk is completely 100% safe, assuming that mom has no infectious disease. It's always available. It doesn't need to be heated. There's no waste to speak of. Uh, in the first in the first 3 to 5 days of life, breast milk is actually referred to as colostrum, and colostrum contains potent antibodies and immunoglobulins that are going to then help protect the infant from future disease, sudden infant death syndrome, infections of excuse me, various types, allergies, asthmas, and other illnesses. Uh, we also see that breastfed infants have a slightly higher intelligence quotient. It's not dramatically high, but it is higher. Breastfed infants also have their gastrointestinal tracts mature much more quickly. And lastly, there is a lower rate of obesity from breastfed or in breastfed infants at 2 years of age versus those who have been bottle fed. Other benefits for the mother include a suppression of ovulation, although we would still want to practice other forms of birth control if another pregnancy was not desired. There's a faster return to pre-pregnancy weight, which we'll see here reasons for in a moment. The fact that hormones are changed and thus suppress ovulation also means that there are lower levels of estrogen, which may reduce a woman's future risk for breast cancer. And as alluded to earlier, breastfeeding offers no waste and is less expensive than purchasing formula for the infant. Right now in New York City, there is an interesting initiative called Latch On. And as you may know, the mayor of New York City, Mayor Bloomberg, has been well known for starting health-related initiatives and legislation in his city. So this is one of the latest ones, an initiative called Latch On, where they are trying to get hospitals to do a better job of promoting breastfeeding and less marketing of infant formula. So they have different types of posters, billboards, and literature to that end, where they're educating new moms about the benefits of breastfeeding. They're also trying to eliminate things like gift bags filled with formula that would have come from the makers of the infant formula, which would have been typically from large pharmaceutical companies. If you're interested in more about this, I encourage you to Google search NYC Latch On, and you can find out more about that. From my conversations with students here in Colorado and those in the medical field, it would seem as though that this type of initiative is already taking place in the absence of any legal action or law. So that's a good thing, because we see that Colorado has the highest number of percentage of mothers who exclusively breastfeed for the first 6 months. Well, there's a lot of reasons why women may not breastfeed, not only for just 6 months, but for any period of time. They may not have been informed about the advantages of breastfeeding. They may also lack, in addition to that, a role model for breastfeeding, meaning maybe their mothers didn't breastfeed, or the women in their family have not breastfed. Now more than ever, there are more and more women who are working, and with shortened maternity leaves, they need to return to their jobs and may not have a dedicated place to properly pump breast milk. And sadly, there are still lingering social concerns in our country where women may feel uncomfortable breastfeeding in public. Certainly also there are medical conditions in which a mother may wish or desire to breastfeed, but she cannot because of her infant being born with some genetic condition, Possibly the mother is on a medication that would get transferred into the breast milk, or mothers who have active infection or active treatment for cancer. Well, let's talk about how breast milk changes uh, through life and actually within an individual breastfeeding session. So you recall a few moments ago I talked about colostrum. Colostrum is released during the first few days of the infant's life, but after or within about 3 to 5 days, the mother's mature breast milk starts to come in, and this breast milk is more like the milk that you and I would be familiar with, cow's milk, anyways. It's got very easily digestible protein. It's very high in fat content as well as omega-3 fatty acids. And although it's not very high in iron, the iron that is in this mature milk is very extremely absorbable. Breast milk will also change within an individual breastfeeding session. Within the first 10 minutes of breastfeeding, we refer to that breast milk that is released as fore milk. It's actually very low in fat and high in carbohydrate, high in protein. The hind milk that then follows after about 10 minutes is more of a very high fat milk that would be like cream. 66% of its calories come from fat, so extremely high fat. Based on these differences, the message that we want to inform mothers who are breastfeeding is that it's important to have a prolonged breastfeeding session, that breastfeeding should not be rushed. Sessions should last at least 10 minutes, ideally, and preferably 20 minutes, possibly even longer, in order for her infant to receive proper nourishment. The diet for breastfeeding is not that much dissimilar than the diet during the second and third trimester. Breastfeeding and the milk production required for it actually is a very calorically expensive process. A woman who's breastfeeding will be burning 700 to 800 calories a day. So that's a tremendous amount of calories that her body is expending in order to maintain that breast milk production. She doesn't want to replace all of those calories because, again, one of the benefits of breastfeeding is this quicker return to pre-pregnancy weight. So ideally, again, as in the second and third trimester, a breastfeeding woman would consume somewhere around 400 to 500 extra calories per day, aiming for a total of 1,800 calories a day. At calorie intakes below that, you can suppress or at least hinder proper breast milk production. Pregnant women should also aim to consume about 13 cups of fluid, obviously because breast milk is fluid in nature. If she wasn't consuming enough fluid, it would be very easy to become dehydrated. 13 cups of fluid is about 100 ounces total. Okay, let's finish up by talking about some potentially harmful dietary components, the major one being mercury. Mercury is a known neurotoxin. We discussed it in our discussion last week, our discussion topic. So it's important to know what those major sources of mercury are, being swordfish, shark, king mackerel, and tilefish, and no more than 6 ounces of tuna per week. However, we do not want breastfeeding or pregnant women to avoid all fish, and unfortunately that was how this message of reducing fish intake was interpreted by the general public. It's still okay to eat fish, particularly those that are high in omega-3 fats, for your infant's neurological development. You just want to avoid the fish that are known to be the highest in mercury. The website that we visited last week provided some excellent resources, and there's a website here also. It's very likely or possible that new fish will come onto that list of high mercury fish. So this is an area that we want to pay close attention to in coming years. Well, thank you very much, and I'll see you in class.